Okay, now, Parsha's boat. So the Parsha begins with Hashem telling Moshe, go to Paro. That Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that go to Paro, and I hardened his heart. And obviously the Mefarshim always ask an obvious question. They ask, why is it that why is Paro punished if Hashem hardened his heart? It's a famous question that's asked, why is Paro guilty if Hashem hardened his heart? So the Mefarshim explain that the first 5 were really Paro's choice. Once a person commits certain sins over and over again, automatically his heart hardens, and it's very difficult to change that. Now, they do say that it was possible, even though Hashem hardened it, but it was very, very difficult. Because that's the punishment. That's the punishment, in a way, for committing certain crimes over and over again and not learning from your lesson. So, the next pasuk Beis, says, Ulaman tisaper, and Hashem tells Moshe to tell Paro, and that for the future generations to know, Ulaman tisaper ba'oznei vincha, in order that you should tell into the ears of your children, uven bincha, and your children's children, eis asher salalti, the mockery that I made b'Mitzrayim, and Mitzrayim, b'esel sosai, and my signs, asher samtivam, that I put on them, v'yadatim, and they will know forever, they will know for generations, Kani Hashem, that I am Hashem. So basically Hashem was telling Moshe that the mockery that I did, I need you to tell it to your children and your children's children. So there's 2 questions here. Question number 1 is, why does it use the lashon of tesaper ba'oznei vincha? Why say it into the ears of your children? What is the point of the Torah telling you, say this into the ears of your children, all the mockery that I did? All it has to say is tell your children. Like all the other times that the Torah tells Moshe to tell the Jewish people, Klal Yisrael, something, it uses the lashon, tell Dabra B'nai Yisrael, speak to the children of B'nai Yisrael. Why does it say the lashon of ba'oznei vincha, into the ears of your children? What message does Hashem want us to learn when we tell our children something into their ears? That's question number 1. Question number 2, you understand the question? Question number 2, why do you have to tell your children and your grandchildren? All it has to say is there's a commandment to tell your children, and automatically every father has that commandment to tell his children. In other words, all it has to say is whisper to your children's ears. There's a chiyuv that you have to, an obligation that you do this, and then every father has that obligation. Every father automatically has that obligation. So question number 1 is, what's the purpose of telling us whisper into their ears? And question number 2 is, why does it have to mention grandparents involved when all it has to mention, the involvement of grandparents, when all it has to mention is a father's obligation to a son, and automatically it means one father to a son and then another father to a son. What is the message? So I saw an unbelievable thing actually regarding the oznei bincha, telling it into the ears of a child. What does a person do when he attempts to tell something to someone in his ears? What message is he trying to convey? There's 2 things that could be happening here. Number 1, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise, and if there's a lot of noise, you got to whisper in somebody's ear, otherwise he won't hear it, right? If he's a little further away from the person and there's a lot of noise, like at a wedding or at certain people in certain places where people here have a lot of noise, in a stadium where people are cheering like crazy, you got to almost whisper in the guy's ear, otherwise he's not going to hear you, no matter, even if he's close by. So the message Hashem was saying to Moshe was that there's going to come generations in the future that are going to deny, and they're going to try to rationalize all the miracles that happened, and they're going to try to say, oh, the reason why the water flowed was because there were tsunamis, it was natural, there was a lot of nature involved. So therefore, there's a lot of static. Say it in such a way to your children like you're whispering it in their ear. Let it be so alive to them. Let it be so real to them that when they hear it, it's almost going to be like as if you whispered in their ear. Not literally whisper in their ear, but it's as if you whispered in their ear. Whisper in the ear means say it so clear and so powerful that all the static from the outside won't affect their it's beautiful Vart. That static should not affect them. Another pshat also is when you whisper something in somebody's ear, you're sending the message of the value of what you're saying. You want people, when you whisper, you say, I want you to hear this, it becomes personal already. It becomes such a personal thing that the person takes heed and listens more attentively to what you were saying because you took the time and whispered in their ear. So again, Hashem was telling Moshe, say it in such a way that it's so clear to them, so personal to them, so powerful, so tangible, as if you whispered in their ear. So that explains the concept of whispering in the ear. But it also explains, tell it to your children and their children too, where it doesn't just mean father to son, but grandparent to grandson. Say it in such a way that automatically, because of the clarity of the way you said it, and because of the passion and the care that you said it, it will almost be automatic that the father will tell his son, and his son will want to tell it to his son. So it's an automatic reaction because of the clarity and the care and the personal, that you explained it to such levels that automatically one will say, I'm going to tell it to my son too. So it's not saying that a person has the commandment to actually tell it to his grandson, but tell it in such a way as if automatically it will trickle down to someone's grandson. So those are two, and that's why we have the Pesach Seder. That's why we have the Pesach Seder. I mean, we try to remember Mitzrayim every night, every day when we say the Shema. You know, when we make Kiddush, we mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we try to envision the greatness of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, at least the leaving of Mitzrayim. That's also because, you know, as a slave that's freed, you have an obligation to the one that, you know, freed you. So automatically, Hashem brings down Mitzrayim many times, and we bring it down because of that obligation that we have to the one that freed us. But say it in such a way where automatically, and that's the explanation of Shalshelis. Why is a generations called Shalshelis? What's a Shalshelis? It's a chain reaction. But a chain is not two pieces. A chain, Shalshelis, comes from Shlosha, three. In order for a chain reaction to be called a chain or a continuation of a chain, you need 1, 2, and 3. You need 3 pieces. It's not a chain if it's 2. It's just a connector. You need 3 to be called a chain. Why? Because in order, like the grandfather who tells his son, who tells his son. So the whole concept of Judaism is something that should be so powerful that it's like a chain, like a shalshelis. But fascinating about shalshelis is you can have a chain. How does a chain look? You have one piece this way. The other piece is completely opposite. Right. But then the third chain goes back to the original, which means that there could be even a skip of generations where, an example, somebody's father is rabbi. Maybe the next generation's not. But because of that shalshelis, because of that foundation, the third generation has that opportunity to go back to the original source. Because that's what a chain does. It connects. But it connects even a different way of the chain connecting back to its original first form. So that's shalshelis. Now, I want to tell you something very powerful. My grandfather says an amazing thing, that when the Jewish people left, they were ready to leave Egypt, and the Makat Bechorot was actually about to take place. It says, the Torah teaches us, La yechratz kelev l'shono, that no dogs barked. No dogs barked when the story of the Makat Bechorot took place. And the Torah is teaching you that this was an unbelievable act by the dogs. Now the question is, why would a dog bark? Why would a dog bark? So the Gemara, actually, Baba Kama, Daf Samach Amud Beis, says that whenever there is death in a city, whenever the angel of death is in a city, the dogs have a certain sense where they start barking. It's a gift that Hashem gave them, a certain sense. Maybe it's to warn people. And you know, you even see this like Kaviyachol, I don't want to say in movies, but when I was growing up with a little kid, sometimes we saw a show where somebody, God forbid, was about to pass away. You would hear the howling, you would hear the dogs barking. It comes from that. It actually does come from that. That dogs barking is a sense that they get when it comes to death. You know, like I said, maybe to warn people, but it's an extra sense that they have. So here the Torah is teaching you that no dogs bark when the angel of death came, or Hashem came down to kill the Makas Bechorot, but the dogs did not bark. But it's such a powerful thing that the Torah teaches us in 2 different places that because the dogs did not bark, what happens? We throw them all nevela, all carcasses, or all karbanot that are nevela, that cannot be eaten, or that were not sacrificed properly. What do we do with these carcasses? The Torah makes a commandment that we must give it to the dogs. Now we know there's not an extra letter in the Torah. So the Torah going out of its way to tell us that we must give the dogs our nevela is obviously something we must try to understand. Now what is the benefit also that the dogs didn't bark? I didn't explain that yet. If Klal Yisrael would have had the dogs barking plus the screaming of the Egyptians dying, it would have caused a lot more confusion and a lot more stress for the Jewish people. So even that minute stress that the Jews, obviously they're leaving and it's exciting and they're being free, that minute stress was a gift from Hashem to show us that Hashem said we are not going to cause even a minute extra stress on the Jewish people when they're leaving. So therefore the dogs not barking actually made it less stressful for the Jewish people. So they get rewarded, but to that level where they get rewarded with twice the Torah is telling you that they get the carcasses, that's one of the questions. That why do they get such a great reward for such a seemingly minor thing? Also, to add to that, I don't know if you know this, but in Parshas B'Shalach, I remember growing up as a little kid. I still remember Mamish going as in pre-1A in first grade. I don't remember much of all my learning, but I actually remember this, that in Parshas B'Shalach, our teachers in pre-1A, kindergarten, first grade even, we would make on the Parsha B'Shalach, we would make special bird feeders. Do you remember this? Do you remember teaching bird feeders? And then we would put it out on the tree, and it was special for the Parsha. Why? Because of a special act in Parsha B'Shalach that the birds did. What did the birds do? Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people that the man will fall. The man will fall every day, but it will not fall on Shabbat. Therefore, Thursday night Friday, the man will fall double portion. It will remain fresh. And you will have enough for Shabbat. Because of that, no melacha should be done, no work should be done, and therefore the man will not fall on Shabbat. So Chazal teach us that there were two people, Dasan and Aviram, that what did they do? They wanted to show that Moshe Rabbeinu was a liar and cause a tremendous ripple effect in Klal Yisrael by doing what? By putting man in front of Moshe's tent. Now, how much man are we talking about? We're talking about a very minute level because everybody was only allowed to take a certain amount. So they were going to put a certain amount in front of Moshe's tent, and believe it or not, it would have caused a ripple effect by the Jewish people that Moshe Rabbeinu is not telling the truth in certain matters, and therefore it would cause a lot of people to go off from following the Torah and mitzvos, which is very fascinating in itself, because why would a little bit of mun by Moshe Rabbeinu's tent cause miles of Jewish people living in encampments affect the Torah and Judaism? Why would that affect? So we learned an unbelievable thing. What?
Repeat the question.
Yes, the question is that Dasan and Aviram were going to put some of the man on Shabbat in front of Moshe's tent, and then Moshe Rabbeinu would look like a liar, and it would cause a tremendous ripple effect, like I said, where people are going to start to deny Moshe and the Torah and mitzvos, which is very fascinating, because how much could they have put already? A little bit. Well, therefore Moshe's a liar? Obviously somebody put it there maybe, but when somebody wants to find fault, it's also a very powerful thing. When somebody wants to find fault, he'll find fault in the minutest, and he will take it to a whole different level. So what happens? The birds come, a miracle happened, and birds came, a seeming miracle came, and they ate the man from the front of Moshe's tent. So, unbelievable thing the birds did, right? The birds went and they took the man, they ate it, because if not, it would have been a tremendous catastrophe by the Jewish people that Moshe is not MS, he's not truthful, and therefore it would cause, like I said, that effect, and people would go off from their ranks in Judaism. So, but the Torah doesn't talk about it. The Torah doesn't reward them. We bring home little bird feeders that we put on the trees, but the Torah specifically doesn't mention any reward that the birds get for doing such an unbelievable act of goodness, an important thing that they did. So why were the dogs rewarded with twice? Torah teaches us that the nevela is given to the carcasses, are given to the dogs, but nothing is mentioned about the wonder that the birds ate the man and saved Klal Yisrael, saved the Jewish people to a certain degree. So my grandfather and many others, I think, have said this, that we see an unbelievable thing, how Hashem judges and how Hashem rewards. A bird, its nature is to eat. A bird loves to eat. So the fact that the birds ate, they did something that was natural for them. Yeah, it was a great thing they did, but it was natural. So they ate. They ate because they love to eat. Yes, the effect was a very important effect for the Jewish people, but it wasn't anything that they went extraordinary out of their comfort zone. For a dog not to bark, it went against its nature. For a dog to not bark in that situation went against its nature. Therefore, Hashem was teaching us that when a person goes against his nature, no matter what it is, every individual has his own challenges, but when you go against that nature, Hashem rewards you tremendously, and Hashem wants us to know that going against one's nature is worth tremendous amount of reward. So that's a beautiful answer. My grandfather, I think I've seen it about one or two other places, but it's a very powerful lesson of what it means to go against one's nature. Now, what I also want to discuss very importantly tonight is the holiness of the Jewish home. The holiness of the Jewish home. Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people, tells Klal Yisrael that they must bring a korban Pesach, a Passover lamb. And there's many laws that go into the lamb. Many laws that go in about breaking bones and not taking this and not doing that, and tzli, and it has to be roasted full. Many, many laws. There's a whole Masechet Gemara just on the holiday of Pesach, but most of it deals with the actual korban Pesach itself, and it's a very, very unbelievable halacha from all the korbanot, why the Passover lamb, why the Pesach lamb is so important and vital in Jewish survival. But we're not going to discuss the actual korban Pesach. We're just going to discuss a few things that teach us the value of the Jewish home, the sanctuary that we call the Jewish home. Jewish people are in Mitzrayim. They're about to leave. They're getting rid of all the avodah zarah and all the tumah and all the contamination that they were exposed to in Egypt, and they're heading out wherever Hashem sends them, across the Yarden, and Hashem soon to Eretz Yisrael. Obviously, they sinned and they had to stay longer, 40 years, but they're on their way to their land. So it makes sense. You're on your way. You're leaving a bad place. Let's just get out of here. And what we're going to do is, then we're just going to move forward. Yet there's a commandment that we sit that night and we bring the korban Pesach and we bring family members to our tables and we make a whole to-do that particular night. Why? What is the purpose of this, making this Pesach Seder, the first Pesach Seder in Egypt with the Passover lamb in a contaminated place? You would think, just get out of here. Let's just get out of here. That's one question. Question number two. Part of the mitzvos of the day of the Passover lamb is to take the blood and smear it on the doorposts. To smear it on the doorposts of every individual's home. But where do you smear that? You smear it actually in the inside of the doorpost, not on the outside. In other words, we wanted to show that we're taking their avodah zarah and we're shechted their idol worship, the sheep, and we're taking the blood, and for whatever reason, there's many different explanations why we put it on the doorpost, but we're supposed to put it on the doorpost. What I want to focus on is, why was it done on the inside, where only the Jews who were celebrating Passover were able to see it? Yeah.
Where inside? What do you mean?
In other words, you close your door and you put it on the inside, not on the outside.
The middle, and the inside.
So the inside.
Wow.
So they put it on the door.
They put it inside where they only can see it.
Correct. What was the purpose of that? Well, you would think that if we're doing the avodah zarah, we want to show, let it be done on the outside. That's a question regarding the blood. Also, there's a halacha that you're not allowed to take any of the korban Pesach and bring the meat outside of your home. You're not allowed to bring any of it out. It's almost like you have to stay in your home. You're not allowed to take any of the meat and take it outside of your house. What is the purpose of these two particular mitzvot? So I actually saw a beautiful, beautiful explanation that the Pesach home, that first night of Passover in Egypt, that first Pesach Seder that the Jews celebrated, was actually the Pesach home became a small Bet HaMikdash. It became literally like a small temple, a small Bet HaMikdash for the Jews living in that house. Why? Because Hashem was teaching that the foundation of Judaism, the foundation of the Bnei Yisrael, of Klal Yisrael, is the Jewish home. The Jewish home is, no, we're not going to wait till we leave Mitzrayim to establish our Jewish identity, our Jewish home, but we're going to actually, in Mitzrayim, that first night that we're about to leave, establish your home. Establish a spiritual home. Establish a house of Torah and mitzvos. Therefore, even before you leave Egypt, that establishment has to be set up. Therefore, the blood was not for the outside; it was for the Jews inside. And taking the meat out of the Bet HaMikdash, same way you're not allowed to take meat out of the Bet HaMikdash, you're not allowed to take anything kodesh that's Mekadesh, you're not allowed to take it outside of, that's Mekadesh for the Bet HaMikdash, you can't take it out. The meat of the Korban Pesach had the din of Kodesh, and you weren't allowed to take it out of your home because your house became a Mikdash Ma'at. So the foundation of Judaism hinges on the Jewish home. And Hashem said, we're not going to wait. And we see that even by Yehuda. When Yaakov was going down to Mitzrayim, he sends Yehuda to Goshen to establish a Bet Knesset, a Bet Midrash, a house of tefillah, a house of learning. Why? Because before he even enters Mitzrayim, that needs to be the first thing that's established before you even walk into a place like Egypt. So the same way before you walk in, you need that establishment. Before you walk out, you need to know that you established that home. So as you go out into the wilderness, you already know that you had your first Pesach Seder already in Mitzrayim. Not even out of Mitzrayim, in Mitzrayim, where you still were officially slaves in a way. They didn't work, but they were in the place, in the jails that they were, in the neighborhood of where they suffered, right? But that is the most unbelievable lesson of what it means to establish a Jewish home. And it's very important that all of us understand that, we always wonder how come our children sometimes don't always follow in the path that we would like. We try our best. The question is, what do you do in your house? What message do you send in your home? And I want to tell you, last night I got a phone call from someone, very special person, and he asked me about his daughter actually going to Florida for winter break. And then the mother got on the phone, and the mother actually said these words to me. She said, my home is the foundation of my children. The home is where my children grow, and I want to make sure that my children are always available on Shabbat, because I know that I can give them what they need spiritually. Once they're out there, I don't have control if I'm not there. Therefore, I try my best to keep them as much as I can in my home for Shabbat, for different things. A lot of times we're very easy to send our kids to places, and then we wonder why when we sent them, they came back, it wasn't a good experience. Because you didn't have the foundation of the home doesn't go with them sometimes. You're hoping that you build such a foundation in your home that when your children move on, they take that and build their own homes. But the foundation of the home is where the parents set up their home and where they mechanech their children. And you try your best to keep that home spiritual. You try your best to keep that home as strong and as the foundation, as powerful as you can. So listen, Mitzvah Shem, when some of you are going to get married, obviously, and you're going to build your own homes, you got to remember, it's not about doing things on the outside of your home. It's more importantly what you do inside your home. I know a lot of people that they go on vacation and they tell me, oh, when I go to Cancun, or I go to this place, and I go to that place, I'm not so careful on the kashrut. Why? But in my Jewish home, I'm very careful. That's beautiful. But if you go other places and your foundation doesn't go with you, the foundation itself wasn't strong enough. You need to know that when you build your Jewish home, it's a foundation that lasts for generations to generations. And that's the whole purpose of the Pesach Seder. That we know that Judaism, the strength of Judaism begins from the Pesach Seder, it says. That the emunah bitachon that a person gets, he'll get it from the Pesach Seder. And it all depends on how you conduct that Pesach Seder. You bring family together. You don't go, people do. I've gone away for Pesach. I won't say I haven't. But it's not the same. I'll be honest with you. I'll fool myself if I think it is. It's not the same. When you build and when you do your Pesach Seder in your own home, and you bring people into your home, and you bring the Kedusha into your home, that's powerful. The Pesach Seder in your home, that night in your home, and as many people as you can to bring in, the better. Because you're showing that the four walls of your home are kadosh, are holy, and you want to conduct your Torah and mitzvos in your home. So I want to wish you all a good week, and Mitzvah Shem, we should all be zocha to build our own special homes, our own foundations, and that will be powerful enough, like grandparents to children, that one will pass it on from generation to generation.